Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Richard Horowitz, and I am the co-host for the Healing from Lyme Summit with Dr. Talks. And it is really my great pleasure today to share with you 18 stories of patients who have done Dapsone combination therapy. These patients are going to tell you their stories about how long they were ill, how many doctors they had seen prior to getting a diagnosis of Lyme disease, what kind of factors were keeping them ill. Did they have Babesia, Bartonella, MSIDS factors like they had low blood pressure and POTS, low adrenals, whether they had leaky gut and mast cell disorder. So they'll be discussing with you the factors that were keeping them ill, because there's so much controversy in this day and age about what exactly is chronic Lyme disease. Is there really an answer? So you're going to hear directly from people today exactly their stories of how long they were sick and how well they did with Dapsone, including some of the side effects of Dapsone, the herxes, the anemia, the methemoglobin reactions, even elevated bilirubin, because a lot of people are scared to do Dapsone and they shouldn't be. I have been doing Lyme disease for close to 40 years with over 13,000 chronically ill patients. And this is the most effective protocol I have ever found. And to start with that, we're going to start with someone who is very dear to me, my dear wife, Lee Horowitz. Lee, could you please come on screen and tell people your story?
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to start us off here. We patients of Dr. Horowitz. Um, I actually had a tough health history in childhood and in my young adult years. I had mono when I was 19 and Epstein-Barr virus in my 20s and 30s. Um, and I had a whole host of symptoms, migraines, digestive problems. I was always cold, tired, brain fog. And then I had the great fortune of meeting Dr. Horowitz and actually marrying him. And that was a really good fortune because shortly after we got married, a few years after, I got bitten by a tick. I never saw the tick, but I had terrible symptoms 2 weeks later and knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had Lyme. Turned out I had Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella, all three, and Mycoplasma. And Rich gave me his best treatments at the time. This was 2001, 2002. And I got better from the antibiotics. I would stop and then relapse. And he would give me again new antibiotics, get better, stop, relapse. Even the herbal protocols, I would get a little better and then relapse. So it was, I think it was 2017 that Dr. Horowitz gave me the Dapsone for the first time. I took 50 milligrams for, I believe it was a full year and or 6 months, one of those, and I was well. Stopped the Dapsone, relapsed.
Right.
It
And
had
what was important is that you were PCR positive in your blood. It still showed an
Yes,
active infection at 6 months with 50 milligrams of Dapsone.
yes, thank you. So then I took 100 milligrams of Dapsone for quite a while, 6 months to a year, and felt well, got off, relapsed. Now, at the time, one of Dr. Horowitz's patients accidentally took 200 milligrams of Dapsone for a month or two. And after he finished that protocol, he was completely well. So I volunteered for that one, of course. And after doing the 200 milligram treatment for 1 month, I was well. I have been in remission for 5 years, almost 5 years. Um, it was extraordinary. During the treatment itself, I had some anemia, I had some shortness of breath upon exertion, but all of that cleared once I stopped the Dapsone a couple of weeks afterwards. That all resolved. And I'm well. I couldn't believe after a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, that I needed no more treatment, that I didn't have to think about what treatment am I going to do for my Lyme today. So I am so grateful. I am so I'm here to really recommend this treatment from my own experience, having had almost every other treatment in the book, including alternative treatments like the Rife machine and homeopathy and herbs. By far, this treatment is the top. I've never been so well, and I've never not needed treatment for this long. So for all those reasons, I would recommend it without reservation. And maybe because I took the Dapsone for so long, for months and years before the 200 milligram dose, I didn't experience terrible symptoms, just the anemia and shortness of breath. And I didn't even take the methylene blue at the time Dr. Horowitz wasn't giving it. So so yes, I would recommend doctors, please give it to your patients. Patients, ask your doctors for this treatment. Let them learn it. Let them learn it. Let them do it. And I think you're going to find a lot of positive results doing this treatment. I
Thank you,
pray
Lee.
for you. Thank
That
you.
was great. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story. And I can't get away with anything anymore because your brain is so clear. I can't even get away with anything. So really, for those of you who are married, Dapsone combination therapy, be wary of the side effects. Your wife or your husband is going to be a lot clearer. So thank you, Lee. Really appreciate it. Our next patient will be sharing their story is Ian. Hi, Ian. Good to see you. Thank you for coming on
Hi,
today.
Dr. Horowitz. My pleasure. Nice to see you as well. Um, I woke up on August 3rd, 2020, and my life had changed. I had a racing heart, motion sickness, waves of nausea, and constant sweating. I had no idea what happened to me. I never found a tick bite. I called my doctor, and he said, "Let's just wait and see how you're feeling in a couple days." And a couple weeks later, it kept growing. I finally went to the emergency room at Southampton Hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack or a stroke. They did every test under the sun. They did blood. I had a head CT, and they said I'm fine. And they sent me home and told me I had vertigo. I knew something was wrong, and luckily my doctor got the blood results, and he saw that I had my elevated white blood cell count, and he put me on doxy. So within 3 weeks of the onset of my symptoms, I was on doxycycline, not knowing what I had. A couple weeks later, I had a full blood workup again, and it came back that I had Lyme and ehrlichiosis. So I immediately went to see my doctor. He put me on doxycycline. I was on it for 2 months. He said, I'm on the standard protocol and you're going to start to feel better, which I did. But I knew I just was not right. And I thought it was going to be a simple 2-month protocol of antibiotics. And it just wasn't the case. So I tried to find some Lyme specialists, and the next 9 months, my symptoms would ebb and flow from terrible to okay. I had weight gain, high blood pressure, pressure in my head, waves of nausea, pain behind my left eye, motion sickness, racing heart. My legs felt detached, no strength in my body, brain fog, high mercury, low adrenal, and I could not find my words, which was one of the most upsetting parts of everything. I needed relief. I lost my life. What I had was gone. And through the Lyme community, I got names of doctors. The next year was filled with a lot of appointments. I saw 4 Lyme doctors, 2 neurologists, an ENT, an otologist, a neuro-ophthalmologist. I had a lumbar puncture. I had 2 MRIs in my brain, and everything came back negative. Nobody could try to help me. I tried holistic approach as well as standard antibiotics. I did oregano oil and natural vitamins. I did ozone IV. I did glutathione IV. I did colloidal silver IV. I had weekly vitamin IV cocktails. I was on doxy, minocycline, azithromycin, steroids. One doctor wanted to sting me with bees. Nobody was able to get me to feel like myself again. And unfortunately, in October 2021, everything took a turn for the worse. I couldn't get out of bed. The world started to spin. I was bedridden for 4 or 5 weeks. And I thought I would be stuck like this for the rest of my life. And the next few months kind of ebbed and flowed, and I was introduced to Dr. Horowitz. I spent 6 hours the first meeting with Dr. Horowitz in his office, and it was the first time that I felt there was hope. Every other doctor felt like a collaboration, was wanted my input. What should I take? What should I try? Not Dr. Horowitz. He had a protocol, and he said this was going to help me. I left that room that day finally feeling like there was hope that I was going to be able to get my life back. I spent the next month preparing for double Dapsone protocol. I had my Excel spreadsheet ready to check off the 40 to 50 pills I had to take twice a day. It was not easy. The first 3 weeks kind of passed, and he was very encouraging. I had blood work every 2 weeks. We spoke a lot. We emailed a lot. After the third week, it started to get difficult. I had anemia. I had shortness of breath. My Lyme symptoms retrieved, but it just felt different. It was very, very difficult, but I knew that this was going to be the answer. And I muddled through. The last week was the most difficult week I've ever had as far as taking medicine. It was hard to get the pills down. But miraculously, after 8 weeks, I felt like a new person. There was a month of protocol to get my blood back to a normalized level, and I felt like a new person. I had my strength back. I looked forward to be able to spend time with my family and not just worrying about whether I was going to be able to get out of bed. It really saved my life. Most days I'm 95%. I still have some vestibular issues, but it was an amazing journey. It's been a year and a half, and I feel great. I want to thank Dr. Horowitz for his wisdom and encouragement, because without both, I never would have been able to get through the protocol. And I'm happy to say that there are answers to chronic Lyme, and Dr. Horowitz has found them. Thank you very much.
Ian, thank you so much. That was very kind. Thank you. That was a great story. Our next person who's going to be sharing is Allie. Allie, can you please come on screen and share your story with everyone? Hi, Allie. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you, Dr. H. My name is Allie, and I have had Lyme for about 9 years. And when I say Lyme, I guess I'm using it as a catch-all term for tick-borne disease, because I also have Babesia, Bartonella, and Ehrlichiosis, and I feel like I'm probably forgetting some infections, but if you have it, I probably have it too. It took me 2 years to receive an accurate diagnosis of Lyme and tick-borne disease. So by the time that I finally found out what I had, it just had seeped into every muscle, tissue, spot in my body, and I was essentially bedridden. I have probably tried every treatment under the sun. If you name it, I have probably done it. And I also have POTS. I have specific antibody deficiency. I have adrenal dysfunction, a good cocktail of things that resulted in exhaustion, severe brain fog, word loss and word block, pain all over my body, in my muscles, in my joints, tremors, sleeplessness, restlessness, mood swings. I experienced a lot of different typical Lyme symptoms, but also neuro-Lyme and tick-borne disease symptoms. I found Dr. Horowitz about 2 years ago and have been doing Dapsone therapy, both regular Dapsone, double Dapsone, and quad Dapsone, over the last year. And while I will say it's a tough protocol, I always like to tell patients it's not the hardest thing that I've ever done. Not even close. So don't let the fear of herxing or not feeling well scare you, because number one, I actually don't think that it's as bad as you will think it is. And number two, I like to say that I really think it's worth it to get your life back in the end. I also like to tell people that I really feel that Dapsone has helped me more in the last year than any therapy I have done in the last 8 to 9 years, combined. Dapsone is the first therapy for me where I really feel like it's had a lasting impact where I am able to complete the therapy, wait and see the results, and then not have this massive, backslide like I used to, where I would complete therapies and then ultimately, within a month or two be unwell again. And it's really helped all of my symptoms across the board. When I first started seeing Dr. H, I would say I was operating at about 50%, capacity, which was not good. And now I would say I'm closer to like 80 to 85%, which is a massive leap. And I have seen improvements in pretty much every symptom across the board now. Most days I'm able to get through the day pretty successfully and be a pretty high functioning individual. So that is my story. I cannot recommend Dapsone therapy enough. I recommend that everyone try it and ask your practitioner about it. And I always here to be a resource for anyone who has questions. So thanks, Dr. H.
Thank you, Ali. That was a great story. I appreciate your sharing it with everybody. Thank you again. And the next person who's going to be sharing their story will be Austin.
Hey,
Hi,
Dr.
Austin.
Hey. Hey guys, good to see everyone. So my story is kind of unique. I'm only 25 and I've had Lyme since, honestly, I can remember since I was a little kid. My mom has it and my brother had it as well. And they all went to Dr. H. And so my symptoms, luckily enough, I wasn't as bad as my mom or some of the people I've heard on this call. So you guys are definitely inspirations for sure. But everyone's story is relative, and so for me, I played basketball. I played Division I and pro. So for me, being sick and having symptoms doesn't really go hand in hand with playing a sport at a high level. So growing up, playing basketball, my main symptoms were just immune deficiency things. So I would get sick a lot. I had stomach issues. Really, it was more allergic to food. So any kind of white flour, sugar, really anything other than whole natural foods, I couldn't really eat without getting pretty bad stomach pains and, fatigue. I was always tired, things like that. So it just didn't go hand in hand with basketball and just being a young kid. All my friends would be out partying or having fun, hanging out, and I couldn't go because I couldn't stay up late because it would mess me up the next day. Um, my mom was much worse than me. I mean, I saw her, she had headaches and things like that. So I didn't ever want it to get to that point. And luckily enough, uh, she found Dr. H and some other doctors when we were living in New Jersey. And I did the whole thing, antibiotics, vitamins, IVs, all those. And through a lot of research and things like that, I definitely got my symptoms under control and so that they were manageable. I never really had any story of where I couldn't function fully or couldn't play basketball, but I wasn't operating at 100%. And for where I wanted to get to basketball wise, I had to. So actually, funnily enough, my brother did the double dose Dapsone protocol before me when we were both in college, and he doesn't play sports or anything like that, but I watched it for him, and he did the 2 month protocol, and he was completely fine. He kind of had the same symptoms as me. Like when he was a little bit younger, he also had headaches and, some other tough things that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I just know it was rough. And the double dose Dapsone protocol, he was in complete remission afterwards, doesn't take vitamins or pills anymore, and he's completely fine. So I did the same thing. I got home. I actually broke my back playing basketball. My symptoms were under control for a while. And that stress, I think, kind of brought back my Lyme symptoms. So rather than doing the whole antibiotic vitamin thing, I saw what he did and talked to Dr. H and tried the double dose Dapsone protocol. And as for me, I would say the symptoms I had were kind of more fatigue. I mean, I was doing rehab and full basketball workouts while on the double Dapsone, which I found out after from Dr. H probably wasn't the best idea. But luckily enough, I didn't really have any hercs or bad symptoms. I would say the biggest thing was just fatigue and shortness of breath while I was working out and stuff. But I mean, I recommend it to anyone who's sick, no matter what level of symptoms or difficulty you're having. Like my symptoms weren't nearly as bad as some of the other people have spoken already, but I'm in remission now. I have no Lyme symptoms. I would say I'm 100% better. So I definitely recommend the protocol, and Dr. H has definitely changed my life. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Austin, for sharing. And you're a couple of years in remission now, right? I mean, you and I haven't spoken in quite a while, actually.
Yeah, so sorry, I forgot that. So I went on the Dapsone protocol, I want to say in 20, I would say either the end of 2020 or the beginning of 21. So yeah, it's been about three and a half years. So
That's great.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
good.
Thank you. It's great. It's great seeing you, and I'm glad you're doing so much better.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. H.
Okay. Thank you. So our next speaker will be Christy. Christy, come on and tell your story, please.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. It's so good to finally get to meet you, because I am not one of your patients, but a lucky girl down in Georgia who found a doctor that follows the current research. So my story began in 2020. I had the summer flu in August, and of course it was COVID world. And so, I didn't even think anything of it. I live on a farm. I've had tick bites, at least 3 over the years. My kids have all had tick bites, and we don't have Lyme in Georgia, Dr. Horowitz. So what happened though after that summer flu is within 60 days, I lost the ability to walk. I needed a cane, and on really bad days, I needed a walker. I could not work. I was passing out working with my patients. I'm a healthcare provider, and reluctantly wound up at the ER at Emory in Atlanta in October. I spent 5 days there in their neurology ward, and they ruled out all the big scary stuff. They ruled out tumors and all other forms of cancer. They ruled out MS. My migraines at that point were about an 8 out of 10. Lumbar puncture, I had all of it. And after 5 days, they said, here's some migraine medication and a prescription for a wheelchair, and released me with no answers. And I'm fortunate enough, because I'm in the healthcare world down here, I knew a functional medicine doctor. So I reached out to her and I said, nobody knows what's going on. And she goes, Christy, we do have Lyme in Georgia. Don't let anyone tell you we don't. And I think you have neurological Lyme. So she gave me a clinical diagnosis of neuroborreliosis and gave me 60 days of doxycycline to give it a go. And within 60 days, I was walking. The migraines, we went after those next. And I did the IV Rocephin, 2 weeks of IV Rocephin, and the migraines were better. So kind of sat for a little bit with that. Well, by April, everything had returned. I was back with the walker. I was back with the migraines, and I started having tremors. My head would tremor. My hands would tremor. I got lost 2 miles from home, with the brain fog being as severe as it had gotten at this point. I had lost my practice, and I was spending hours and hours in bed. I was probably out of bed for 2 hours a day. I reached back out to her, and she said, we have to go after this. We're going to throw the kitchen sink at it. I want you to read the study. And she forwarded me your October 2020 double dose Dapsone protocol. And it looked scary as hell, to be honest with you. And I said, let's do it. I got to save my life. We're going to save my life. And what I loved about your protocol was that not only was it all of these medications and pills, but it also supported my system while I was going through there. When you get cancer treatment, they don't give you all the vitamins to help your body stay strong during the process. You did with your protocol. So, between the leucovorin and the methylene blue and the 3 strains of probiotics, not one, what else? The liposomal glutathione. It helped my body process it all. I will admit it, the 3.5 week mark of the double dose Dapsone protocol, I begged my husband to let me quit. I begged my doctor to let me quit. I didn't think I could do it. It was very hard. I had a lot of herpesing, and they wouldn't let me quit. I was halfway there, they said. So fast forward, I finished. I did wind up with a lot of methylene blue, and I had an oxygen tank for 2 weeks. But I am in remission. So that was all May and June of 2021. I am in remission. I am working again. I'm riding my horses again. I wrote a book. I wrote a book about my story and your treatment because I went through a period of time where there was no hope. And I want the world, I want Georgia, the state of Georgia, and all the doctors here to know that we do have Lyme and that we can treat it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I feel so blessed to get to finally meet you and talk with you today, because you saved my life, and thank you.
You know, Christy, what's beautiful for me is because the fact that my life has somehow had an effect on someone I have never met and changed their life. It's the most marvelous thing for me to hear, like as a doctor, that you can save people's lives you've never even met by simply working on these protocols. So it touches me. And I want to thank you for telling your story for everyone. It's a great story.
Thank you. And, I want these doctors listening to this to know that my doctor had to be very brave and had to be smart. She was following that research. And so please, my beg, I beg all of these doctors at this summit with you, do the research, be brave, and you will save lives. So thank you. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Christy. That was great. Our next speaker will be Logan. Logan, can you please come on and tell people your story?
How you doing, Dr. Horowitz?
Great. It's great to see you. We haven't seen each other in quite a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Man, feeling good. So yeah, my story, I've had Lyme since I can remember, since I was a kid. Grew up on a ranch in California. So naturally I love animals, been around horses, cats, dogs, cows, all of it. And I'd fall asleep as a kid on dog beds. I'd lay on horses. Just ended up getting so many ticks. In hindsight, it probably wasn't a great idea, but got a lot of tick bites. And so about my sophomore year of high school, I had all my symptoms had just kept piling up. Symptoms since 5th grade, really, that we traced back. I couldn't even run the mile in 5th grade, a physical fitness test for a PE class. It was so hard for me. My joints hurt. I had brain fog, and in high school, I felt like I couldn't keep up with my peers, physically and academically. I was on the football team, and I couldn't give my all, and it upset me so much. And finally, about sophomore year, when COVID hit, sophomore year high school, and I just started getting such bad headaches for about a month. And they were like migraines. I couldn't stand them, could not bear them, and just did everything we could. And finally, felt so blessed to have my mom and dad who fought for me. And we went to several physicians, and years of questions, piled up since 5th grade to my sophomore year. We had no idea. We went to all sorts of doctors, and they'd tell me it was this. And then somebody else would tell me, oh, no, they're wrong. It was this. And it was just such a hard time. And I really think in that time I found God, and just comfort in prayer. And right after that, I recognized how blessed I was. And then that's when I found Dr. Horowitz. He's encouraged me so much. And I immediately knew after meeting him that he could help me. So like I said, I had all these health problems. I had POTS, low adrenals, Babesia, Bartonella, Lyme disease, of course, food sensitivities, and yeah, just so much trouble sleeping, extreme nausea, joint pain. There was a time when I could hardly walk up the stairs at our house, and it was rough. I was a kid. I should be able-bodied enough to walk up a set of stairs, and I couldn't even do that. And it was so demoralizing and just tough for me to accept. And when I started the treatment, it was tough at the time. I wanted to quit so bad. I didn't know why I was doing it. I didn't understand fully. And now I do. Oh, sorry, that's my dog. Poncho, come here. Sorry about that. Yeah, I wanted to quit so bad. And luckily I had the support from my parents who pushed me so hard, and Dr. Horowitz who encouraged me with all of his wisdom and knowledge on this, all the support he gave me with the double Dapsone. So now, yeah, I would just encourage, I'd recommend anybody suffering with Lyme or any of these tick-borne illnesses. Dr. Horowitz has such great wisdom and understanding for all these illnesses. So I thank you, Dr. Horowitz, for everything you've done for me. I really appreciate just being called to be here.
Oh, Logan, it was great seeing you. We haven't seen each other in a while, and I'm really glad you're in remission and you're doing so well and going on to college and just living your life. So great. And please give my best to your family.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're just going to take a 30-second break here. I just want to thank everybody who has tuned in for the Healing from Lyme Summit. Please know that if you're listening to this talk today, you're getting some of really the greatest information, I believe, that's available for chronic Lyme, and you're hearing directly from patients at this point what their experience has been with Dapsone. So if you are someone who's already subscribed to the summit, wonderful, just stay tuned. We're going to keep going with the summit. We've got many more speakers. But if you're someone who is not subscribed to the full summit, please go onto the side of your computer or the bottom, just click on the links, and you can find out how to get more information. Okay, so we're going to go on now to our next speaker. Pam, could you please come on and tell people your great story?
Okay. Hi, Doc.
Hey there, good to see you.
Thanks. I got sick probably about 15 years ago. It started with a bad knee, and sorry, I have some brain issues. I have some brain lesions from having Babesia bartonella, Q fever, tularemia, heavy metals, and a good case of mold. So my words are difficult to retrieve, but I'm working on it. I came to Doc very, very ill in a wheelchair, pretty much at the end of the line. But through a lot of treatment, I did IV antibiotics. We tried a lot of things, but the double dose Dapsone really was a game changer. I started off with the initial dose of a low dose. We built it up, and I would say my last treatment with methylene blue has brought so much back to me. I can function, I can walk. I still have some brain issues, but I'm working on that. Doc is a wealth of knowledge and compassion. I have nothing but kindness to say for him. He has brought me back for sure.
Well, thank you, Pam. And Pam, tell people how much medicine you were taking for your pain, regarding how bad your pain was with morphine when you first started to see me, and whether you're taking narcotics now.
Nope, totally off pain meds. I'm proud to say I was on full-time pain meds. I had heart palpitations. I couldn't walk. I had no word retrieval, wheelchair. I truly thought I was at the end of the line. And then I found Doc. He sat down with me. Boy, my first meeting was probably 4 hours. And I never tested positive for a long time. And then once I started getting healthy again, it all came out positive again with all the tick-borne illnesses. So.
And I think what's amazing with you, Pam, is because of the history that you had with Bartonella, that it was only really the last time you did the 6-day pulse, right? It was that last 6-day pulse was the first time you did it for Bart. That's when you saw the amazing response with the higher dose methylene blue, correct?
Correct. The methylene blue and the quad Dapsone changed. I mean, and we've been at it a long time. It changed everything.
Yeah.
It gave me hope. I want to spread that hope to the world that you can get better. You might have some fallout from being ill for so long, but life is great.
Great. Well, thank you, Pam, for sharing your story. I know everyone's going to really have a lot of hope because you were extremely ill, and you're such a lovely person with Anita. It's so great to see you better and having your life back. So thank you for telling your story.
Thank you, Doc.
Okay. Our next person who's going to be sharing their story is Ben. Ben, can you come on and tell people your history?
Hey, Dr.
Hey there. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I think I'd like to start by saying it's a hard thing to relive your story over and over again, and it's something I'm grateful for, that I don't have to live through it as much anymore. But what's interesting about stories like this is that you tend not to know the real story until you're actually in it. And so for me, I think the first time I realized that there was something larger was I had gone on to a post-graduation trip after graduating from college with some friends to Southeast Asia. And of course, everyone on that trip got sick, and we all were throwing up and had stomach issues. But when I got home, I started having some pretty terrible symptoms. It started with fatigue, with pain, as well as some cognitive symptoms, as well as some psychological issues that were quite stressing. And at the time, we went to some doctors, and they assumed that, of course, I had gotten a parasite while I was away in Southeast Asia. We did some parasite tests, none of which actually came back positive. But what was interesting, for some reason, we decided to do blood work and found that there was Babesia, there was Bartonella, and there was Borrelia as well that was coming back. Some more abnormal than others, but the point was that that was the issue. And I think at that point I realized that actually what was going on was this is a much longer and subtle infection that came on over years. And it was actually during my senior year that I started to remember and look back about some strange symptoms. I worked out 6 days a week, and I was a very ambitious student. I went to the University of Pennsylvania and was looking forward to starting my full-time job in New York City. And at the time, I think the first thing I remembered was walking down the street in Philadelphia and imagining to myself how bad these construction workers were for not leveling the sidewalk correctly, because I felt like I was falling over every time I was walking down the street. Of course, that wasn't the case, and there was a lot of vestibular issues going on. But I went to the university doctors, I went to the university healthcare system, and no one had any understanding what could possibly had been going on. So throughout that senior year, it did affect me. I still went to class, I still was social and was doing my work, but it definitely, the symptoms got worse over time. And then of course, going to this trip, I already wasn't feeling great, and then coming back, things just kind of went haywire. At that point, I think I lost my hearing in my left ear about in September 2017. And this was after I had been semi-diagnosed, or it was right before I had done the parasite test, but not actually diagnosed yet with Lyme. And the doctor I went to assumed I had acoustic neuroma right away. So at 21 years old, telling my new girlfriend that I had a brain tumor wasn't necessarily the best flirting strategy, but ended up being that the MRI came back negative, which was great. But at the time, I took steroids, of course, to deal with the supposed inflammation that was causing that. And after a week of steroids, everything got worse. I had been working full time for a month at that point. I started having increased joint pain. I couldn't walk up the stairs anymore. I started having cognitive issues. I had arthritis-like symptoms. I went from reading a book every 2 weeks to throwing up after reading a paragraph. I lost 50 pounds in 3 months. I started having heart palpitations to the point where I would wake up in the middle of the night and think I was having a heart attack and had to go to the hospital. At that point, I was seeing doctors who were Lyme literate, and I was put on doxycycline. I was put on a number of other antibiotics, as well as vitamins and minerals, and doing IVs. I took antibiotics for about 1.5 years on and off, and different types. I did anti-malarial drugs. I did anti-parasitic drugs. At the point, about a few months into starting all of those treatments, I had to go on medical leave for my job. This was in the beginning of 2018. At this point, I think what was interesting is that you kind of go in waves. Some days were a little bit better than others, but ultimately I was a 22-year-old university graduate who had been working in real estate finance, and then all of a sudden was bedridden, and I couldn't have conversations with my colleagues because I couldn't think about what I was going to say and also listen to what they were saying at the same time. So that was pretty depressing. It was pretty horrible to live through, and I didn't really know if I'd ever get to a place where I'd have my life back. That being said, it got worse before it got better. I then was diagnosed with arrhythmia. I was told in my echo that I had some liquid that didn't necessarily look good at the moment near my heart. I was diagnosed with CIDP. I was diagnosed with POTS. I did IVIG for about a year and a half, which did help, but it wasn't the thing that got me better. I got my tooth taken out. I got my molars cleaned out because due to infection. So I really did everything I think possible. I think I calculated it. It was 30,000 pills, 2,500 shots, and like 2,000 hours of IVs over the course of about 4 years.
And this is before seeing me and doing Dapsone.
This was before seeing you and doing.
Yeah. And Ben, when you did the double dose, how long now are you in remission? Because you and I, again, we don't speak regularly. How long now are you feeling well, where you've got your life back?
I finally got to you in 2021, early 2021. And so I finished Dapsone the summer of 2021. It's now 2024. So I've been in remission for, 2.5 years.
Wow.
It's pretty cool. Following remission, I went back to school. I have 2 master's degrees, one in bioengineering and one in business, and I'm now working for a startup in Paris that's using AI for drug development, specifically for immunology. So
that is fabulous. Yeah,
I didn't study biology in undergrad, but my illness was kind of a trial by fire in pushing me towards this path, and to me it was what I needed. I took advantage of the opportunity once. Following our treatment, I was able to, and I feel really lucky to have found you. That being said, I will be honest, double dose Dapsone was not, it's not a walk in the park. I think the first time I met you, you said to me, you got to do it, but it's going to be like chemotherapy. And at that point, I didn't really have any other decision to make. It was either live the rest of my life in bed or get up and do something about it. And it was pretty brutal. The first month was okay, but the second month, it's nausea every day. I had anemia, methemoglobinemia. Methylene blue helped, but my blood oxygen went down to I think 80% one day, and we were like, let's not take the second dose today and wait until tomorrow. But it worked out. I was able to push through and get it done. And it in the end, it probably took another 3 months after finishing Dapsone for my body to actually calibrate and come back and to feel better. And I think psychologically, you think right after you're done with the treatment, it's got to be good and you're completely better. But when you've been sick for so many years and with so many different illnesses, you have to give yourself time and your body time to really heal and get back to the
right. But it's great right now, Ben, that you're 3 years in remission. You're living in Paris. You got a new job, right? I mean, life is great. So I'm so happy that you got your life back with this protocol.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story. The next person who's going to be coming on and telling your story will be Francis. Can you please come on? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Horowitz. Yeah. So with the benefit of hindsight, I had Lyme symptoms at least as early as the 1990s. I'm 54 years old. I grew up in Lyme country. I had ticks on me all the time. I never had a bullseye, so I never had any inkling that I had Lyme disease. So I had all these unusual symptoms that went on for decades. And the common denominator was that anytime I went on antibiotics for a sinus infection or something, I always felt a little better. But it was very hard to try to explain that to a doctor. In fact, one went as far as to suggest that I was psychologically addicted to antibiotics. So I guess I was the first recreational antibiotic user. But everything kind of just lingered along for a long time until I got COVID. I got COVID twice. And after the first time I had COVID, I had many unusual symptoms pop up. And the second time I got COVID, they all came back and much more severe. So I had things like sinus pressure, dry mouth, weakness, fatigue. I had ulcers in my mouth. I had ulcers in my small intestine that were spotted with a pill cam, brain fog, dry eye, overactive bladder. Sometimes I couldn't sleep. Sometimes I slept 11 hours a day. And I saw about 10 different specialty areas of medicine, probably 20 doctors total over a course of about 18 months. And one of two things would happen. Either they would say, okay, I'm a gastroenterologist, I'm seeing these ulcers in your small intestine, so therefore you have Crohn's disease. Or they would say, oh, you've got these dozen symptoms seemingly unrelated. Clearly, this is psychological. This is a patient that needs to be seen by someone who can help them between the ears. In any event, I got diagnosed with many conditions and treated for many conditions, none of which helped. Finally, in less than a year ago, so the spring of 2023, I came to see Dr. Horowitz. We had our 6-hour appointment. We went through all my history, and at the end, he said, "Okay, here's your test sheet. You're going to get tested for 100 different things." And I said, "Well, that's great, but I mean, and I don't expect you to diagnose me today without any testing, but like, what do you think is happening? You've been doing this a long time." And he said, "Well, almost certainly you have Lyme, but you might have other things as well." And as it turned out, I had Lyme and Babesia, and in hindsight, I'm almost sure I had that for decades. So we did the Dapsone treatment. I did that in the fall of 2023, and like others, I won't kid you, it was very difficult. I think like many people, the first month on the lower dosage wasn't too bad. The second month, I was really very fatigued. I could not have worked anywhere near full time. It was tough. But in the context of my life had kind of been taken away with severe fatigue where I could, barely function, that was an easy trade-off. It was a no-brainer to me to try it. So I think for anybody whose life has kind of been taken over by one of these illnesses, you have to go after it. Now, as far as my result, I'm probably 60% better. My situation is somewhat clouded by the fact that I also have Babesia, and we just found that my Babesia has come back, and so I'm treating for that again. So there's some fogginess between how much of my symptoms are caused by Lyme and how much by Babesia. But so I'm a little bit of work in progress, but I'm definitely much better.
Thank you, Francis. It's a great story. And your story of seeing all these doctors and going through this for years, it's really classic. So I'm glad you're 60% better, and we'll get you there. Babesia is Babesia is one of those parasites. It takes a while with rotations to go after it, but thank you for hanging in there because you're getting your life back and it's inspiring. So thank you again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next patient who's going to share their story is Kathleen. Can you please come on and tell people your story?
Sure will.
Hi.
Hi, how are you, Dr. Howard?
Good to see you.
Hello, everyone. Well, I'm Kathleen, and my story starts in 1994. I live in the Berkshires and in Massachusetts, and I had gone on a trip to the Cape. Came back about 3 weeks later, all my joints were swollen. I could hardly walk. I couldn't think. And I was working at a local hospital as a data communications and network specialist. So I wasn't understanding things, comprehending what I was doing. So I went to my rheumatologist, and he thought it was Lyme. So he tested. It was positive, not for ELISA, but for Western blot. So he treated me with Doxy, but it was like 3 months before I started treatment. So in beginning, I think it was May of 96, I was so sick that he had a PICC line put in, and I was on IV Rocephin for 6 weeks. So after that, I just started feeling better. I was back to work. And then my husband got transferred to Florida. So now we go to Florida. I think I'm fine. And I start, it was probably about 4 months in, no, yeah, 4 years into it, I started feeling it all came back. Neurologically, I just was a mess. I had brain fog, cognitive neuropathy, joint swelling, all that kind of stuff. So I started researching because the doctors in Florida, they don't know anything and they wouldn't treat me for Lyme. So I got online and found Dr. Sam Donta from Boston Medical, and he had a part-time practice in Falmouth. So I went to him and he saved me. He started me on Biaxin and Plaquenil, and but I had all kinds of cognitive, low adrenals, Epstein-Barr. You know, as I sit here and I'm trying to tell the story, it's so hard. So anyway, so I was with Sam for 5 years, and then he retired. And he gave me a lot of Biaxin and Plaquenil, and so got through that, still having problems. In 2010, it came back with a vengeance. I couldn't walk. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't work. I ended up going on, I had to quit work and going on disability. So when I was 62 years old, I went on Social Security disability. Couldn't read a book. I couldn't cook. I couldn't read a recipe. I researched stocks. I couldn't do any of that. So now Sam's retired. So now I have to find another doctor. So I started researching again, and I found Dr. Horowitz, but he wasn't taking any patients, but he was putting on a 3-day seminar at Kripalu in Lenox, Mass. So I flew myself up here and I got into the seminar, and I met Dr. Horowitz, his wife, his staff, and learned all about Lyme, co-infections, everything about Lyme and what isn't being done and why people aren't getting treated. So I got in with Dr. Horowitz in I think it was 2016. He and John Fallon have saved my life. So 2016, we started with different antibiotics. I tested positive for Babesia, Bartonella, Lyme, Borrelia, low adrenals, POTS, everything. So in 2020, we started the Dapsone, but it was just, it wasn't double dose, I don't believe. And halfway through the treatment, now I created an Excel spreadsheet, and you had, I think it was like 45 pills to take. So through half of it, I couldn't get through it because of the volume of it all. So we quit. They let me quit. And then that was during COVID. Then I started back in 2023. And I went 2 weeks, or the third week, I got through it. And it is tough. The third week, I had the bilirubin.
Right, the bilirubin goes up with Dapsone, and that we took a temporary break again for the second time, and then finally did it for the third time.
Finally did it for the third time, and I have been in remission now. I finished in June, and everything has come back. I had to do rehab also. John had me for just your entire body to get everything moving again. So that was absolutely wonderful. And now I can cook. I want to do things. I'm reading. I'm in a book club. I'm knitting. And he saved my life. And I just have to tell you, do not be afraid, because you can do it. You can be strong. You owe this to yourself. It's a long journey. You've been on a long journey. And God, please, to all the physicians out there, please start listening to Dr. Horowitz and using his protocol, because it is saving lives. And I just love you. So
thank you, Kathleen. That was lovely. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The next person who'll be sharing their story is John, who's coming to us from Malaysia, of all places. So, John, you want to tell your story to people?
Oh, it's actually Singapore.
Singapore, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, cool. So back in 2015, I was living a pretty normal life, so quite active. I went camping in the Blue Mountains in Sydney, and I was bitten by a tick. I actually found the tick in my chest, and there wasn't any instant symptoms. I didn't have a bullseye rash or anything like that. And the frustrating thing was Australia doesn't actually recognize Lyme disease. And so I wasn't aware about the illness at all. Over the course of 2 years, I went from a pretty active state to living with constant fatigue and serious brain fog. The point that I knew something was seriously wrong was when I was unable to read sentences of books. And I started consulting with a number of different physicians and doing many tests, including blood tests, MRIs, brain scans, allergy tests, and more. Everything kept coming back negative. And I finally found my answer through Google and confirmed the results through a German lab test. I finally figured out that I had Lyme, Bartonella, and Babesia. The peak of my ordeal was in 2022 when I caught COVID. And at this point, this incapacitated me to the point I was bedridden for 9 months, and I struggled to walk and talk during this period. Primarily, my symptoms included cognitive issues, including memory loss, difficulty processing information, physical and neurological symptoms, including body spasms, facial paralysis, walking issues, severe fatigue, body pains, vertigo, heat sensitivity, neck stiffness, and general depression. So from there, over the course of 6 years, I tried a number of different treatments, including hypothermia, the Buna protocol, disulfiram, IVs in a Germany clinic, without long-term relief to my symptoms. And then a year ago, I met Dr. Horowitz through my brother. The first treatment of the quadruple Dapsone protocol was the most difficult. I was unable to walk much and had anemia and severe nausea. And also the sheer volume of pills that were required was quite intense to get down and keep down. It took about 2 months to normalize and feel better. And from there, the subsequent treatment plans were much smoother, with only anemia post-pulses that normalize a few weeks after each pulse. At present, I'm pretty much back to normal now with a few lingering symptoms. They really come if I have a bad sleep routine that night, or if I have certain preserved foods, and then I would have a flare-up in terms of body weakness or brain fog. But I would estimate I'm close to 80% normal at this point in time. I guess winding back a little over a year ago, I thought my life was over. I didn't think I could continue living a normal life, especially after being sick for 8 years. It was extremely demoralizing for my health to keep deteriorating and for no treatments to work. After going through the Dapsone protocol with Dr. Horowitz, I'm now nearly back to normal, and I'm actually having a newborn daughter in a week's time. And so what I want to share with everyone is, if you're feeling hopeless, please don't give up. You can get through this. With the right treatment and a bit of perseverance, you can turn things around. And thank you, Dr. Horowitz and your team. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And you've done, I think, 2 Dapsone pulses of the 6th day for BART, right? Because you have active BART. We still have a couple more pulses to do, but each pulse, you improved after each pulse when you did it.
Yeah, so I think after the first major treatment, the 2.5 months in New York, I was back to 50, 60% functioning. And each subsequent pulse, it probably improved me about 10, 15%.
Right. Yeah, because I'm finding it's about 4 to 6 pulses for most people to actually put them in long term. But I'm happy you're doing so much better. Congratulations on the new little girl that's coming. So please send me pictures. Send pictures the minute she's born.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, John. Our next patient who's going to be sharing is Nikki. I'm sorry, Nicholas.
Hello, Dr. H.
There you are. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So it's a bit hard for me to pinpoint exactly how long I've been sick, but it's been about 14 years at this point. So it's quite literally everything I can remember. To me, most of the symptoms weren't anything special or out of the ordinary, just part of everyday life. I didn't think much of fatigue, memory loss, joint pain. I just thought those were normal, really. When I was in 2nd grade, I was taken out of school, actually, and I was homeschooled because I wasn't able to function well enough to attend school. I was tested for Lyme about 3 times during this period. First was at the recommendation of one of my teachers in first grade. Each test came negative, but actually by the fourth it came up positive, which definitely changed things. After this time, I had about a dozen doctors, but most of them just treated the symptoms and not the Lyme itself. Eventually, after a few years, I was put on doxycycline and about a dozen other medicines. It was for months or years. I honestly don't remember how long it was or the specific medicines. Because of this, my condition improved by quite a bit. We eventually stopped, but in retrospect, I was not fully improved. Then in December of 2020, I caught COVID, and Lyme got much, much worse from there. Several months before I started the protocol, I was bad enough that I had to lie down for at least 20 hours a day. Even when I was doing schoolwork and homework, I couldn't really sit up. Eventually, my parents heard about Dr. Horowitz. I met him in June of last year, so 2023, and I began the protocol. Being entirely honest, I was very skeptical at first. I wasn't expecting any way to improve, and like I think I mentioned a minute ago, I didn't have any frame of reference for what normal should be like, which meant I didn't really know how bad I was. During the Dapsone protocol itself, I did suffer some side effects, the worst of which was fatigue, which was far, far worse than the fatigue caused by the Lyme. Even still, it wasn't bad enough that I couldn't do anything. I could exercise and play sports. Like, I was still able to keep playing on my local high school's tennis team throughout the whole protocol. But I will admit that it was difficult to get through. And my mom, who was being treated at the same time I was, did find it more difficult than I did. I'm not in remission quite yet, but I'm doing worlds better than I was before. It took longer than I expected to improve after the protocol actually ended. As a matter of fact, the week after I went off the Dapsone was probably the worst week. But after that, I began to improve really like by a noticeable amount every day. And a lot of that was just was healing from the medicine itself. My symptoms like back pain, joint pain, memory issues, they were getting better. Like I could tell they were getting better even when I was doing the protocol. Overall, it was difficult to get through, and for a couple of days, it was almost worse than the actual Lyme was. But I would say it was absolutely worth it. Now that I'm starting to recover, I'm starting to feel normal for the first time, and I would definitely recommend Dr. Horowitz's protocol, really without reservations.
Thank you, Nicholas. And I'm happy. And by the way, I think I told you, you might have been the only person on quadruple Dapsone that was playing tennis at the time when you were still doing this. I mean, you were really amazing pushing through the protocol. So thank you for sharing your story. It's a great story, and we've still got some pulses to go, but you're getting there, and you've been sick your whole life. So it's really encouraging to hear your stories. So thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
Okay. The next patient will be Sharon. Sharon, would you like to come on and tell people your story?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Dr. Horowitz. I am really thrilled to talk to you today because I feel so much better than I have for most of my adult life. I first started asking doctors about my symptoms in 1995. I was 35 years old, and Lyme disease didn't show up on any of my blood tests. And I was told that I was working too hard, that of course I had 3 children and I was working too hard, and then I was premenopausal, and then I was menopausal. So there was always a reason why I felt incredibly fatigued and had severe, severe brain fog. I eventually, in 2014, went to a neurologist who sent my blood work to Stony Brook, and they diagnosed me as having Lyme and eventually Bartonella and Babesia. But at the same time, I was actually also going to a clinic in New York that was treating people with early onset Alzheimer's, because that was my diagnosis at that time. With the neurologist, I did some antibiotic treatments. I was on an IVIG treatment, and I did that for about 2 or 3 years. with the same kind of results as other people have said, feeling better for a while and then getting really sick again. I had all of the symptoms that everyone else has talked about, except I didn't have to be in a wheelchair, but I had leaky gut, food allergies, mold, heavy metals, POTS, immune deficiency, low adrenals, anxiety. I had tinnitus, joint pain, which included double frozen shoulders. But the worst really was the brain fog and disorientation. And at some points at the very end, not being able to, having trouble finding my way home, and the severe fatigue. So I was thrilled when Dr. Horowitz started seeing patients again. I went straight there, and he did the same thing with me. We talked for 4 to 6 hours, and he explained the protocol. And I went on the double Dapsone, and by the time I finished, I would say I was about 85 to 90% normal. Everything has been incredible. I've been in remission for 2 years. I still am working with Dr. Horowitz, and after the protocol, we worked on heavy metals detox and mold detox. And there's still a few symptoms that I have, which include tinnitus and tremors and still a little brain fog. And so I spoke with him this week, actually, and we're going to do a Dapsone pulse to see if I can get to 100% better, which is what my goal is. And I'm not giving up until I get there. I will say the herxing for me in the last month was quite bad. The last 2 weeks, I was really on my back the entire time. And if I tried to walk up and down any stairs, I had to, stop every 2 or 3 steps and catch my breath. The last week, my lips turned blue, and everyone who knew me thought that I was out of my mind. But I want to say I did the glutathione, and I did the red light sauna every day. And that definitely helped with my symptoms. It took me about 3 to 6 months to really start feeling better. But what I noticed was that every month I felt better and better. And by 6 months, I thought I was better. And then at 12 months, I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing. And it's just been an incredible experience of rejuvenation and enjoying health. And I think it's a miracle. And I'm so, so grateful to Dr. Horowitz. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. It's a beautiful story, and I'm so happy you're doing so much better. Our next patient is going to be sharing is AJ. AJ, can you come on and tell people your story?
Hi there. So I consider myself a pretty lucky case. I got Lyme very recently, last summer of 2023. Back then, I had no clue what was going on. I had never even really heard about Lyme disease at that point, and I was experiencing all sorts of symptoms, mostly neurological, so neuropathy, vision blurriness, headaches, chills, and some anxiety came with that as well, which I later found out was probably one of the symptoms. I'd gone to a hospital in the ER in Indiana where I was doing an internship, and that's where I got Lyme disease. Eventually, I was discharged with a wait and see diagnosis from the doctor because all the tests came back healthy and clear, as if nothing was wrong, with very few abnormalities in my blood tests. They had done MRIs, CT scans, even a spinal puncture. Nothing came back. Eventually, we started to go around to neurologists because we thought it was mostly neurological. And they were helpful, but mostly in the fact that they could tell me I didn't have anything neurological going on. And so that left us confused, worried, and without any real answers. We later found out that the general hospitalist at the Indiana hospital had canceled my Lyme and tick-borne illness panel because they thought, oh, he's not sick. He doesn't need those. And so we later said, okay, fine, whatever. We went back to California. I got a Lyme test, and it was in the equivocal range, which apparently my general doctor was not comfortable enough with that to give me any antibiotics at the time. Took us a while. Finally, about a month into it at that point. I finally got him to give me doxycycline, and I felt a little better after it. I then went on. I was preparing for my junior year of college, and I started to get all the symptoms coming back, including much worse ones, including like stiffness in my muscles and joints, and brain fog, and very, very high anxiety at that point. Uh, very lucky to have family members and friends who searched every corner of the internet and connections they have to try and find someone. And luckily, we eventually family friends of ours, the Lindberghs, Logan's family, introduced us to Dr. Horowitz. I was starting my junior year at that point, and I went out to New York. We did the whole 4 hour, I think, appointment with him. Ended up getting tons of information, all lining up with the symptoms I had, and all very accurately describing stuff I didn't even tell him yet, which made me very confident that I was on the right track. And I was extremely happy that I was finally getting real solid answers. I am through the 9-week treatment at this point. I had some difficulty with it. Obviously, there was quite a few times when I was herxing, and it caused my anxiety to skyrocket, including I went to the ER with a panic attack at the last couple weeks, but nothing was really wrong. Luckily, it was just me having a ton of anxiety about it. About a week after that protocol, though, I was feeling so much better. It was night and day compared to what it was before. I had been unable to work out, unable to really walk around before, and it was hard for me to concentrate on schoolwork. And I afterwards, it was all better. During the actual protocol, by the way, while it was difficult, I was able to continue my schooling and passed all my classes. So while it is tough, it is not impossible to get through it and still live a semi-normal life. So it shouldn't be too scary, is my point. I'm currently in my first pulse. This is the last day of my first pulse, and obviously I'm currently on the double dose Dapsone, and I'm still feeling somewhat decent, as you all can see. So
you are actually in your last day of quad Dapsone with a methemoglobin that's a little elevated, and you're speaking perfectly right on a call. So I mean, the reason I also wanted you to tell your story is you're right in the middle of the treatment right now during the last day.
I am, and while it's not a walk in the park, it is definitely manageable at this point. This pulse has been so much better, and after the first treatment, while most of my symptoms were gone, mostly I think because I was able to find Dr. Horowitz very early in my in this cycle. I am very hopeful that this next pulse is going to put me that much further, and I'm so happy that I was able to find Dr. Horowitz and have family and friends that can support me through this. It's been life-saving. I'd obviously recommend it to everyone and anyone who has that disease.
Well, thank you, AJ. It's a great story, and I'm glad you're doing well in school and you're about to get through, and you've got a great supportive family. So congrats, and we're looking forward to great things in the future from you. So thank you for sharing. We're just going to make a quick difference because I just got a text that one of the patients who's in school in California needs to go next. So Olivia, would you please come on and just tell people your story so I can get you back to classes?
So much for making that change. I really appreciate it. My name is Olivia Goodrow, and I was bitten by a tick at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri when I was 7 years old. I didn't see the tick, and I didn't have a bullseye rash, and I spent the next 18 months seeing 51 doctors, all from Colorado, and I had MRIs, CAT scans, EKGs, a liver biopsy. I had my adenoids removed, and I was misdiagnosed a ton of times. They thought that I needed to drink water because I am originally from Colorado and it's a high altitude state. And then they thought that, maybe I had Wilson's disease. And then when the test came back saying that I didn't have it, they started to think that I was maybe making it up for attention. So I was misdiagnosed with Munchausen syndrome. Then, after the 51st doctor, I was finally randomly diagnosed with Lyme disease. And I hopped around from a couple other doctors who, they were making sure that I was staying out of the hospital, but they weren't having any progress on my health. And then I met Dr. Richard Horowitz when I was in the 6th grade. And we had our very first appointment, and I think it lasted somewhere around 6 hours. And he went through all of my individual records. And the entire time he was like, oh my gosh, they could have seen this symptom and they could have known and they could have done this test. And of course, when he got to the Munchausen syndrome part, he literally banged his head on the wall because he was like, you know what, like this happens to so many people and this is just so unfair. And he was able to diagnose me with not just Lyme disease, but Bartonella, Babesia, POTS syndrome, relapsing fever, and an anti-1 tryptophan deficiency in my liver. And so then after that, I went on a protocol of 86 pills a day for a couple of years. And it was, to be honest, so much, and it was terrible. And it was getting me to, feel better, and I was still having progress, but just the amount of pill taking. And I was still in school, and I, wanted to be in school. That was kind of my motivator to, get out of bed every day, was seeing my friends and, doing what the normal kids did. And then in the summer, going into my freshman year of high school, Dr. Horowitz had this idea to put me on double dose Dapsone. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think did we do double dose, or did we do just a single dose for my body weight? I think
you were the first patient, you were the first pediatric patient I ever put Dapsone on, and you did up to 100 milligrams for up to a year, then didn't even do any treatment, I think, for 6 or 7 or 8 years because you were well enough from the low dose. But then you were about to go to college. We did the BART test. It was positive for the fish. And we went, okay, Olivia, you actually got to do the whole protocol the way we described it.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I did that freshman year going into high school, and I felt great. And so throughout high school, I was, I believe I said that I was roughly around 70% better. I was slowly getting there, and then it got up to like 86%. I was slowly getting there. And then my senior year, we realized that, we need to do the actual proper protocol. And so I did the 9 weeks of the quadruple dose Dapsone, with I believe the last week being all the quadruple dose. I was ramping myself up till the last week. And to be honest, again, someone else mentioned that it's not a walk in the park, and it truly isn't. I feel like, though, if all 42 of those pills had been combined into one singular pill, I would have done a lot better. I think that the issue was your gut can't handle really that many pills. It takes a lot for you to actually take those every single day. And so that was my biggest difficulty, was, looking at the box and being like, oh, I have to do this again. And it got rid of all of my symptoms. I used to have, brain fog, tremors in my right hand. I had muscle aches, pains. I lost my vision for periods at a time. It was hard for me to get out of bed. My neck muscles gave out. And these pills that I took, this protocol, it truly saved my life. And, throughout this time and throughout my journey with Lyme disease, and especially Dr. Horowitz has seen it all. I have, created my own nonprofit because, what I went through, it was terrible, but I know that people out there, they're going through so much worse, and they do not have a Dr. Horowitz to help them. And truthfully, he has saved my life. I'm now at UCLA right now. I'm living my best life. I have felt the most normal that I've ever felt in my entire life since I was 7 years old. And, I can confidently say that I'm in remission. And I know that we just had this conversation a couple of days ago, but now we're worrying about, illnesses that college kids get, and, trying not to, get super sick. And we're not worrying about Lyme disease and, tick-borne illnesses anymore. And it's such a relieving and such a refreshing change to have. And so this treatment has been absolutely incredible for me, and I would recommend it to anyone who is, eligible for it. It is truly amazing. It has, turned my life around for the better. And I wrote a book talking about, my nonprofit, my journey, and, my journey to, becoming better while also, dealing with school. And I actually have a newer version of the book coming out in May of this year. And here, I have it right next to me. It looks like this. And it talks more about, Dapsone and how that was, especially, being in high school, trying to be active with friends, family, schoolwork. And, I was getting into colleges at that point. So I had, a little bit on my plate to deal with. And on top of that, every morning and every night, I was taking all of these pills. So if you ever need like a second opinion and you're like, man, I really want to try this treatment, but I want to hear from a patient, I would go recommend maybe just checking out the little chapter that I have about Dapsone. But Dr. Horowitz, you have truly saved my life. And I thank you so much for that every single day.
Thank you, Liv. It's really my pleasure. You got a great family. It's been great knowing you. And I know you're going to do great things in school and go on and help the world. So thanks again for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to go back to our normal. So Nikki, can you please come on and tell your story to the audience?
Hi, I'm Nikki. I wanted to start off by saying that the Dapsone treatment has been a complete game changer for me. I got sick in 2017 and was lucky enough to get diagnosed in August of 2018. I was diagnosed with Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella. My symptoms included a lot of neurological manifestations. I had extreme fatigue, joint pain, neuropathy, cognitive difficulties, just to name a handful. I barely made it through my senior year of high school and then took 2.5 years off from college. I'm also a triplet, so it was extremely hard for me to compare myself to two other people who were healthy and to see where I was in comparison to them. Prior to seeing Dr. Horowitz, I worked with a different Lyme doctor. I did IV antibiotics for a little over a year, as well as a cocktail of oral antibiotics and disulfiram for around 8 months. When I first met with Dr. Horowitz, it was concluded that I also had mild POTS, mold toxicity, severe adrenal dysfunction. I met with him in May of 2022, and I told him that it was my dream to be able to go back to school in August, and we made that happen. I have done a few rounds of Dapsone, and I've tolerated the drug extremely well. I was definitely worried about the side effects, but I had no, issues whatsoever. Previously, getting the IV treatments was very limiting in terms of what I was able to do. I did years of oral antibiotics, and that was also, and I experienced burnout from this multiple times. It's really hard on you mentally and emotionally to be taking pills every day for years at a time. But once I started a Dapsone, I got so much better, so much quicker. It's been great that the Dapsone pulses are so short because that really helps with my mental health and the burnout of taking all these pills. And when people ask how the treatment is, I don't lie, it is hard and it is intense. But I chose my heart, and I chose that my heart would be the treatment and not my suffering with my Lyme disease. Today, I'm about 95 to 98% better. I just finished a quad, just did quad Dapsone, just finished that about a month ago. And I'm feeling great. I've moved out of living with my parents. I'm in school and I'm doing so well. I don't even really remember the last time I felt so great. So thank you.
It is so great seeing you look so well, Nikki. You look fabulous. And now you can kick butt with your other triplets. Now it's no more like I'm the only one who's sick. So congratulations on getting back into school. And this was, I think, your second 6-day Dapsone pulse, right? This was the second pulse. You had done 4. You're finding the 6-day pulses, basically, they're easier as you go along and you get better with each pulse.
Yeah. And the load, each time I do a Dapsone pulse, the load of bacteria is lower. So the herxes aren't as bad as as
that's great.
The pulses go on.
Thank you. It's so good to see you looking so well. It really makes me happy. And congratulations of getting into school. And we look forward also to great things. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next person is going to be Tap. Tap, would you like to come on and tell your story?
Good morning. I was diagnosed in 2003 after trying to figure out why vertigo was so bad and why I couldn't remember things. And at one point in 1999, they were testing me for Alzheimer's. I was 39 years old at the time. I found Dr. Raxlin. My wife found Dr. Raxlin. She actually was the one who diagnosed me, and then we had to go find somebody who agreed. And I was on 55 weeks of IV antibiotics and then went on to a bunch of other systems. And then I ended up, I was, pardon me. but I ended up with Dr. Horowitz, thankfully. Nothing had actually worked well. We've been through what, Doc, 12 years, something close to that.
You and I have been together for at least 12 or 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And, we've gone through lots and lots of protocols, and we finally came up with Dapsone. And I did, I don't know, a couple of months of Daps, just, single dose Dapsone. And we worked it up to another protocol with 100 milligrams of Dapsone. Then along came the double dose, and that helped so much. It took me to the point where I could finally come up with some sort of reliance on my abilities. It took most of the brain fog. It took most of my memories back. And was it tough? Yes. Yes, it was tough. I watched my mom go through 3 rounds of cancer and chemo. And it's not as bad as chemo. I just had 2 knees replaced and went on a 6-day pulse. And we found that I had a different view on being in pain. It's not that bad. I mean, yes, I've had two knees replaced, but I got to tell you, being on the double dose Dapsone fixed just about everything. Is it worth doing? Absolutely. There's not even a question in my mind. Anybody who has Lyme is not thinking about doing it, think again. You need to do this. It will fix your life.
Thank you, Tap. It's great seeing you so much better. And please give my best to Ginny, and thank you for telling your story for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And the last person of the day is going to be Enid. So Enid, you're going to be the last person to tell your story, which is a really interesting one.
Thank you, Dr. H. Let me just come back on there. Okay.
There you are.
Hi. So Dr. Enid Haller, that's my name. And we all, my husband and my daughter all have suffered from Lyme disease for over 20 years. And we wouldn't have figured any of this out if it wasn't for Dr. H, that's for sure. We were misdiagnosed for many years. The one that the thing that really happened was we had to move away from New York City, where I had a psychotherapy practice that was thriving and I couldn't work anymore. And we moved to the worst place in the world, Martha's Vineyard, which is ground zero for Lyme disease. And we didn't realize that. That was our vacation spot. So that's probably where we were infected. I'm sure it was, all 3 of us. And my daughter, the second year we moved there, lost her ability to walk. She was bedridden. And someone handed me, it was my friend Brooke Adams, who lived down the street. I used to be an actor, so I knew her from my old acting days. And she gave me the movie Under Our Skin, which had been in the film festival that summer. And if I hadn't watched that movie and seen Dr. Horowitz in that movie, I wouldn't have figured out, what to do. And I saw this film and I was like, those are all our symptoms. We all have different symptoms for Lyme. So, that's why it was so confusing. 3 different people, 3 different sets of symptoms. But what was wonderful is to see that film. And then I contacted Dr. Horowitz right away. Back then, it was easy to get in to see you, Dr. Horowitz, before anybody knew about this. But he spent, it was the most incredible experience of really my life with a doctor. He spent 3 hours with each one of us. We were there for 9 hours in his office on a Saturday, I might say. And that was, I was just crying, at the end, because I was so thankful that we found the right doctor. And I knew, when he said to us, the last thing he said when we left that day, he said, don't worry, you're going to get better. And I was just like, oh my God, after years of just misdiagnosis and going through so many different doctors and them saying your blood work is fine, there's nothing wrong with you. It was just such a blessing. And So it took a while to get better. It was like peeling an onion. So he hit everything that he had to hit. Our symptoms started getting better right away, really. My daughter started walking right away. It was rather quick for her. She hadn't been ill as long as Sam and I. But Sam had been bitten on Martha's Vineyard when he was 14, and he had Bell's palsy in his face, and had to go home, to New Jersey after that, and had Bell's palsy for a year in his face at age 13, and nobody diagnosed him with Lyme or thought anything of this. And so he had been carrying Lyme for a very long time. So we all gradually started getting better. We were very thankful. I became a Lyme advocate in Martha's Vineyard, started the Lyme support group there. And because everybody was sick on Martha's Vineyard, it was really a bad area for Lyme. So I just sent everybody to Dr. Horowitz. I think it got many patients from me.
Stop it now. No more, Enid.
I sent him many people over the years. They all have gotten better. I started the Lyme support group there. I ran that for 10 years. And all of them I sent to Dr. H. And so, he has saved so many people. I just can't even tell you. And everyone's so thankful on the vineyard, especially. And and then I just wanted to try to give back. We all got, very well. I did get an IV in my arm for a year, or IV Rocephin. I did go to Germany. We did that hyperthermia, but it wasn't until the Dapsone that really got me over the hump, that I really felt like I was myself again. And that was 4 years ago. 5 years ago, I've been in remission since we did the Dapsone. And I did the double dose, and that just got me back to normal, and I was able to go full force. And I helped produce a film with Lindsay Keys came to see me on Martha's Vineyard, and she said, "I want to do a documentary," and I said, "So do I." I've been wanting to do that for years, and so we did The Quiet Epidemic. Please go stream it if you can. Dr. H is all through it, and it tells the story pretty well, I think, of what happened with Lyme. It took 7 years to make it. But we put all our heart and soul into that film, and thank God I was able to get well to try and do a film and pass the knowledge on, hopefully to as many people as possible. I hope people hear this. I hope this is a little sad. My daughter, was in pre-med for Georgetown last year, and they just would not hear one thing about chronic Lyme at Georgetown University. They didn't want to hear anything about that. So she dropped out, and now she's learning how to do magnet therapy with Joan Randall here at Woodstock, which has helped, and she has helped many people too. And lots of Dr. H's patients have come to Joan, but this magnet therapy is good too. But I have to say, Dapsone is the thing. Dapsone is really what happened. And thank you, Dr. Horowitz, for saving all three of our lives, and thank you for being such a good friend, you and Lee, through the years.
Well, thank you, Enid. Thank you for telling your story. And one of the most important things in your story also, apart from being sick for so long, it wasn't me who gave you the IV antibiotics for a year. You took 1 year of Rocephin, and within 1 month of coming off Rocephin, relapsed, right? You did double dose Dapsone, and you're over 4 years in full remission, right? So, I mean, it's important for people to know, I don't even need IV antibiotics anymore, right? People are getting their lives back with this 9-week oral protocol with these 2-week pulses. So thank you again. And yes, The Quiet Epidemic, it's a wonderful documentary, and I'm sure a lot of people will see it. So thank you, Enid. Really appreciate it. So we've come to the end today of these talks that we're doing with others. I just want to thank everybody for attending this Healing from Lyme Summit. I think you're going to probably find that this particular episode is probably one of the most striking ones you will have heard during our entire summit, because you heard from people directly the kind of help, how sick they were for so many years. They went from doctor to doctor. Olivia, I think, one with 53 or 54 doctors. I've had them go up to 100. But you can hear that looking at the MSIDS model, looking at the 6 sources of inflammation, the downstream effects, working at heavy metals and mold and POTS and adrenal dysfunction, co-infections, all of these things are important to get you better. It's all in my last book, How Can I Get Better? And all of this, by the way, is written up in the medical literature. As I said, we've published 8 articles on Dapsone. So if you're listening to this and you want to get Dapsone therapy, your doctor just has to look at the last article I published in Microorganisms in September 2023. The entire protocol is there to get you better. So I want to thank everyone again today from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to share your stories. Dapsone combination therapy for me has been a life changer for all of my patients. It's given them hope, and it gives me hope as a physician that we really have an answer. And the next step is going to be a double-blind, multi-center, randomized controlled trial. So look out for the end of this year. We're going to use these testimonials to show to everyone to hopefully raise the funds to do a Dapsone trial and prove to the rest of the world what you have known today and what you've shared today, which is Dapsone combination therapy and the 16-point MSIDS model is really an answer for those people who are chronically suffering, and you should all have hope. Again, thank you for the bottom of my heart for everyone today who has participated. Again, my name is Dr. Richard Horowitz. I'm co-host for the Healing for Lyme Summit. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll be seeing you for another episode soon.